You are walking through tall grass 100,000 years ago. The sun is going down. Something moves behind you. You turn around and see two yellow eyes catching the last light. A cave lion. Twice the size of any lion alive today. 700 pounds of muscle, claws, and teeth. And it is looking directly at you. You have no gun. No knife. Not even a sharp stick. Your teeth are flat. Your nails are useless. You cannot outrun it. You cannot outclimb it. You cannot fight it. So tell me, why are you here? Why did any of your ancestors survive long enough for you to exist? Because every single predator I am about to describe is extinct. And you are not. Let us start with what was actually hunting us, because most people have this backwards. We were not the hunters. We were the hunted. For millions of years, our ancestors were prey. Not occasionally. Not unluckily. Systematically, strategically, and continuously preyed upon by animals that had spent millions of years evolving for one specific purpose, killing large mammals. And we were large mammals. In 1924, a South African anthropologist named Raymond Dart found a skull that permanently altered how science understood early human history. It belonged to a child, an Australopithecus approximately 3 years old, one of our earliest human ancestors. And punctured through both eye sockets were two holes. Perfectly spaced. Perfectly sized. A precise match for the canine teeth of a leopard. This child was not the victim of a tragic accident. This child was prey. Caught. Carried. Consumed. And the reason that skull matters, the reason Dart's hands were shaking when he measured those puncture marks, is that it was not an exception. It was the rule. For millions of years, this was Tuesday. Now let us talk about what else was out there. Because the predator list reads like something a disturbed mind invented. Smilodon fatalis. The saber-toothed cat. 11-inch canines, longer than your hand from wrist to fingertip. 600 pounds. Built like a tank. It did not chase. It ambushed. It waited in tall grass or at water sources and exploded at 30 miles per hour. One bite to the throat and the prey's windpipe was gone. It had no interest in fair fights. It was an ambush specialist that had evolved over millions of years to do one thing, appear from nowhere and end the interaction before it began. Arctodus simus. The short-faced bear. The largest mammalian land predator North America has ever seen. 12 feet tall when standing. 2,000 pounds. And here is the detail that changes everything. It was not an opportunistic omnivore like modern bears. It was a hypercarnivore. It ate meat only. Its long legs were built for endurance running, not the shambling lumber of a grizzly but a sustained gallop that researchers estimate reached 40 miles per hour. If a short-faced bear saw you and decided to come for you, there was no outrunning it. There was no outclimbing it. There was no decision to make. There was only what happened next. Crocuta spelaea. The cave hyena. Larger and heavier than the spotted hyenas alive today, with a bite force of 1,100 pounds per square inch. For context, the average human jaw produces about 160 pounds per square inch. A cave hyena could bite through bone, not because it was angry, but because crushing bone to access the marrow inside was a standard feeding behavior. They hunted in coordinated packs of 20 or more. And they hunted at night. Specifically at night. When our ancestors could barely see past the edge of the firelight. Dire wolves in packs of 30. Cave lions 25% larger than African lions, also hunting in coordinated groups. Giant cheetahs. Scimitar cats. And in South America, terror birds. 10 feet tall. Flightless. With beaks capable of shattering a human skull in a single downward strike. Everywhere the human lineage went, something was already there waiting to eat it. And now here is the part that researchers do not emphasize enough, because it is genuinely uncomfortable. We had nothing. A chimpanzee, our closest living relative, sharing approximately 98.7% of our DNA, is 3 times stronger than an adult human. Chimps have fangs. They can climb 30 feet in seconds. They can rip apart prey with their bare hands. And they still get killed by leopards regularly. We were slower than chimpanzees. Weaker than chimpanzees. We could not see in the dark. We could not smell predators at a distance the way deer and antelope can. Our hearing was mediocre. We stood upright, which made us visible from enormous distances across open ground. Our infants were completely helpless for the first year of life and produced screaming sounds that functioned as a dinner bell for any predator within hearing range. And we could not even grow a coat of fur when the temperature dropped. By every measurable biological standard, we should have been a brief and unremarkable footnote in the Pleistocene fossil record. A small, fragile, poorly equipped primate that lasted maybe 100,000 years before something larger and better designed finished the job. But something happened that no predator's brain was built to process. The first weapon was fire. And I do not mean this casually. In Wonderwork Cave, South Africa, archaeologists found the oldest confirmed evidence of controlled fire use in human history. Burned bones, layered ash deposits, and hearth structures dating back 1 million years. 1 million. Long before our species existed in its current form, something in our lineage had looked at a wildfire, approached it instead of fleeing, and understood that it could be taken and kept. A campfire creates a safety zone approximately 30 feet in diameter. Inside that circle, predators will not enter. Not because they have been taught not to. Because it is hardwired into them at a neurological level. Fire is not a thing that ambush predators can process rationally. It triggers an ancient avoidance response that no amount of hunger overrides. Even today, lions in Africa will not approach a campfire. The same lions that will walk through a safari camp in the dark, test vehicle doors, and look directly into the faces of people behind glass, will not cross a fire line. For the cave lion outside the firelight circle, the one that outweighs you by 600 pounds, that can see in the dark and sprint at speeds you cannot match, the fire is not a physical barrier. It is a psychological one. And the first human who understood this had discovered the most asymmetric weapon in the history of predator-prey relationships. But fire did something else that changed the species in ways that took generations to fully manifest. It added time. Before fire, the useful day ended at sunset. In winter, that was 8 hours. In summer, 12. When the darkness came, you found shelter and you stayed completely still until morning. After fire, you had 3 to 4 additional usable hours every single night. Those hours did not feel significant to any individual who lived through them. But across thousands of generations, those hours were where human cognition was built. The storytelling happened in those hours. The tool-making happened in those hours. The strategy happened in those hours. The thinking that required no immediate task, the thinking that produced art, planning, and eventually language, happened in those hours. Fire also produced cooking. Cooked food is more calorie-dense and easier to digest than raw food. More calories meant the human body could afford an organ it could not otherwise sustain, a large brain. The human brain consumes approximately 20% of the body's total caloric intake. In a world of raw food and marginal caloric survival, that is an impossible luxury. Fire made it affordable. The larger brain produced better problem solving. Better problem solving produced more effective fire management. The feedback loop had begun. But fire alone did not save us. The second weapon was endurance, and this is the one that most people have never heard of, because it sounds too strange to be true. We are terrible sprinters. A saber-toothed cat could reach 30 miles per hour in 3 seconds. We top out at around 28, and only for short distances, and only if we are elite athletes. By the mathematics of raw foot speed, we lose every chase. Every single time. But no predator that has ever lived could do what we can do, run continuously for 6 hours in the heat of the day. It is called persistence hunting, and it remains one of the most documented and simultaneously most overlooked facts about human physiology. You do not chase an animal at full speed. You track it at a jog, just fast enough to keep it moving, not fast enough to close the distance immediately. You follow it for 3 hours. 4 hours. 6 hours. The animal runs, stops, overheats, runs again. It cannot sweat while moving the way we can. It cannot cool itself through sustained exertion. Eventually, inevitably, it collapses from heat stroke. And you walk up to it. No claws required. No fangs required. Just the specific evolutionary adaptation of an upright, sweating, persistence-capable primate that had been shaped by millions of years of running away from things faster than itself. The predators that hunted us were built for explosive, decisive force. We were built for the long game. And eventually, the long game won. The third weapon was pattern recognition. The human brain evolved to detect patterns in noise at a level no other animal can match. Broken twigs. Disturbed earth. The specific angle of tracks in soft mud. The shape of a depression that tells you what animal, how large, and how many hours ago it passed. We started applying this same observational intelligence to predators. Saber-tooths ambush near water sources at dusk. Cave lions avoid fire. Short-faced bears are solitary and territorial and will not pursue prey beyond the boundaries of their range. Every generation accumulated this knowledge. Every generation taught the next. And the knowledge compounded in a way that biological instinct never could, because instinct cannot be updated. Knowledge can. But the weapon that actually decided the outcome, the one that made everything else possible, was something that no predator's brain could evolve to counter. We cared for each other when caring had no immediate survival value. In 2001, archaeologists excavating a site in Dmanisi, Georgia, found a skeleton dating back 1.8 million years. One of our earliest ancestors in that fossil record. And when they examined the skull, they found something that should not have been possible. This individual had lost all of their teeth, not recently, but years before death. The bone had fully healed around the empty sockets. No teeth means you cannot chew raw meat. You cannot process the hard plant material that forms the base of a foraging diet. You cannot survive alone in the Pleistocene without teeth. This individual survived for years after losing them. Someone was feeding this person. Chewing food and transferring it. Or cooking food soft enough to be processed by a toothless jaw. Someone in the group made a decision, without language to articulate the reasoning, without philosophy to justify the cost, that this individual's life had value beyond their immediate productive contribution to the group. No predator does this. A lion that cannot hunt dies. A cave hyena that cannot keep pace with the pack is abandoned. The logic of predator survival is brutally efficient. If you cannot contribute, you do not consume resources that others need. Our ancestors violated this logic at enormous cost, and they did it consistently and repeatedly across tens of thousands of years. In Shanidar Cave, Iraq, researchers found a Neanderthal skeleton approximately 60,000 years old. This individual had a completely healed fracture of the left arm so severe that it had rendered the limb functionally useless. One eye socket showed evidence of severe trauma, suggesting blindness in that eye. Advanced arthritis in multiple joints. By any biological calculus, this individual was a net drain on the group, consuming food, requiring protection, and contributing almost nothing to hunting, gathering, or defense. This individual lived to approximately 40 years of age. In the Pleistocene. With no weapons and no walls. The group kept this person alive for years. Not because it was strategically optimal. Because they had developed something that predators never needed to evolve, the psychological capacity to value a life that was not useful. This is the thing that actually saved us. Not the spears. Not the fire. Not the endurance running. Those were tools. The thing that made the tools matter was the social architecture that allowed knowledge to accumulate across generations, that created groups large and stable enough to sustain specialized roles, that made it possible to develop the coordinated strategic hunting that ended the reign of every apex predator on this continent. Around 400,000 years ago, in what is now Skåningen, Germany, wooden throwing spears were crafted with a sophistication that implies years of accumulated knowledge. Aerodynamic. Balanced at the front third of the shaft, the way a modern javelin is balanced, for maximum accuracy on release. Designed to be thrown from 30 feet, from outside the range at which a saber-tooth could close the distance before the second spear was in the air. We stopped running. We started hunting. And then 50,000 years ago, something shifted in the migration record that has never been fully explained. Humans left Africa and moved into Europe, Asia, Australia, and eventually the Americas. And wherever we arrived, the megafauna started disappearing. Not slowly. Not over millions of years of gradual competition. Within a few thousand years of human arrival, the large predators vanished. Saber-tooths gone 10,000 years ago. Cave lions gone 14,000 years ago. Short-faced bears gone 11,000 years ago. Woolly mammoths, dire wolves, giant ground sloths, terror birds, gone. There is academic debate about how much of this was human action versus climate change. But the pattern is undeniable across every continent. Everywhere we arrived, the large animals that had defined the landscape for millions of years disappeared within a geological instant. We did not just survive them. We eliminated them. Here is the psychological truth underneath all of this, the thing that the predator skull and the toothless elder and the Shanidar skeleton are all pointing toward. Evolution gives every predator one advantage. Speed. Strength. Venom. Camouflage. Echolocation. Night vision. The evolutionary strategy for apex predators is optimization, become the best possible version of one specific killing capability and then rely on it absolutely. Evolution gave us something different. We were given biological mediocrity across every single dimension that predators were optimized for. We were the slowest, weakest, most visually vulnerable large primate on the savanna. And in response to that biological mediocrity, we were forced to develop the one capability that optimized predators never needed and therefore never evolved, adaptability. The ability to change the strategy when the current strategy fails. The ability to pass accumulated knowledge to the next generation so they begin where you ended rather than starting over. Every predator that hunted us had one answer to every problem it encountered. We had the ability to find a new answer when the old one stopped working. For 2 million years we were prey. We hid in trees. We ran from shadows. We lost children to leopards in the night and could do nothing but grieve and move camp before morning. We were afraid of the dark in a way that modern humans, in lit cities behind locked doors, cannot fully conceptualize. The fear was not irrational. The darkness genuinely contained things that were going to kill us. But we had one thing that every predator around us lacked completely. We could learn from our mistakes and teach the next generation not to make them. We could take the grief of a child lost to a leopard and turn it into a protocol that every child in every subsequent generation was taught to follow. And over enough time, that was sufficient. Every single predator that spent millions of years perfecting its particular form of killing, perfecting it so thoroughly that no individual prey animal could survive an encounter, is gone. And the species they could not kill, the one that was too slow and too weak and too blind in the dark to have any business surviving the Pleistocene, is here. Reading this. 7 billion strong. So thoroughly dominant that the predators we used to fear are now kept alive only because we choose to let them exist. The cave lion that looked at your ancestor in the tall grass 100,000 years ago made a mistake. It looked at the weakest large primate on the savanna and saw prey. It could not see what was behind the eyes. It could not see the fire that would be built the following night, or the spear that would be crafted from the wood of a tree it rested under, or the strategy being assembled in a brain that was running 36 hours of accumulated knowledge from people who had been afraid of cave lions before and survived to teach their children why. It looked at you and saw something easy. That was the last mistake it ever made.